You have the ability to create your own custom KPIs in iReliability. The KPI Creator allows you to build custom KPIs from the data you have mined in the data mining feature. The KPI Creator is pretty much limitless in how you can configure and manipulate the data. It is a two-pronged approach. Keep in mind, you don't have to use the KPI feature if you are only interested in the data generated with data mining. Both features in this module have their uses and benefits. Please see the demo video on how to use the data mining feature in iReliability. Since there are so many scenarios, we will choose one as an example to showcase the capabilities of the KPI feature. Keep in mind, this is a single example of how this module can be used. Use this example to familiarize yourself with how the module works and how you can manipulate the data. The sky is the limit. We strongly encourage you to get into the data and play with these features. Playing with this feature is the only way you're going to become proficient with it. Don't be afraid to experiment. It all boils down to how willing you are to spend the time realizing the power you have at your disposal. First, click on the data mining link on the reporting tab. In order for you to create any KPI, you have to know the data you want to input and what data you want output for the KPI. In this scenario, let's assume we want to generate a KPI that shows how many jobs we have completed for each technology deployed in the database. First, we need to mine that data using the data mining feature. Click on the New View tab and let's mine the data. We need to give the data mine a name and choose the data category that we want to mine the data from. Please see the data mining and KPI user manuals for more detailed information and definitions of the data mining categories. When you have named the data mine and chosen the data category, click on the Save Choices and Continue button. You can choose which database or databases you want to mine the data from. Simply make your selections and click on the Save Choices and Continue button. Next, you can choose the data fields you want to mine data from in the data category that you chose. If there are data fields you do not want to mine data from, simply uncheck those. When you are finished defining the data fields, click on the Finish and Create View button. The data will be mined from the database or databases you chose and will be displayed in a grid like you see here. You can sort or filter the data here if you like. Now, you can take this data and create custom KPIs in the Custom KPI Creator. Click on the Custom KPI Creator link above the data grid. The KPI Creator will open. Basically, you are building the grid you want from the data you mined. To access all of the data items you mined in data mining, right-click in the data grid and choose Show Field List option. Now you can begin building your data grid. The first order of business is to decide how we want to lay out the report. In other words, what data do we want in the columns and rows? The report grid box is laid out in a matrix format. We structure the report by dragging data fields out of the data field box to the report grid box in the position where we would like to see them in the matrix. For this example, let's say that for the rows in the data grid, I want to be able to drill down from the database to the job name and then to the job type. Simply start dragging those data fields into the row section of the grid, database name first. The job name next. Then the job subtype name. Since we want to see how many jobs we have completed by technology, we want to drag the job subtype name into the column data field. Remember, when setting up your jobs, the job subtype name is the technology of the job. Now for the numbers part. If you want to do counts or sums or percentages, etc., you have to use the data fields with ID numbers. You must have a number for your data in order to do calculations. So, let's drag the Job Subtype ID data field into the Data Items section of the data grid. The job subtype ID numbers will be filled in the data grid. However, we want to know how many of these there are for each subtype. If we right-click on the data field for this job subtype ID, we can choose the count option, and these will be counted for us. Now instead of ID numbers, we have counts of how many. Again, there are many options on how to manipulate your data. As an example, you can click on the filter arrows in any of the data field headers and filter the data as you please. You can also drag the data fields around in the data grid to reorder them. You can also drag the data fields out of the grid back into the data field list if you decide you don't want them included in the data grid. There are way too many to illustrate here. Again, please play with this feature and get familiar with its capabilities. As you can see, there are several pages of data. If you go to the last page of data, you can see the grand totals. The grand totals are listed here. So as you can see, we now have our KPI data for how many jobs have been completed in the database we chose by technology. Now that we have this complete, we can save the KPI data. Simply give the KPI a name and click on the Save As button. Your data will be available for you to generate in the graphical illustration of your choosing. There are many options to choose from. You also have options on what you show in the graphs. If you would like this KPI graph to be available on your KPIs page in your database, simply click on the Save to My KPIs button. Now when you go to your KPIs page, your KPI graph will be available for you to view. If you have the appropriate rights, you can also share the KPI graph with other databases, and the graph will be available to view on the KPI page in the shared database as well. This is a handy feature if the KPI is made up of data from several databases. Simply click on the Assign Database KPIs button. You can select the available databases to share with and use the arrows to move them to the Assigned Databases list. It's that simple. You can remove assigned databases here as well in the event you need to manage in the future. Corporations that have multiple databases are assigned under a single corporate account in iReliability. If you want to share a KPI with all databases within a corporation, click on the Assign Corporate KPIs button. All available corporations will be listed. Select the available corporation you want to share the KPI with, and use the arrows to move to the Assigned Corporations list. This list can be managed here in the future as well. You can access a KPI report you have created at any time. Click on the data mining link on the reporting page. Current data mining reports that you have created will be listed in the User Save Views tab. You have a couple of options here. In the Cached Data column, you will see the date and timestamp that you created this data mining report. If you want to run that exact data that was generated on the date and time listed here, click the link. If you want to run the data as of right now, live, click on the Load View link. You can always edit the databases or the data fields included in your data mining report by clicking on the databases or columns links as well. When your data mining report is generated, click on the Custom KPI Creator link. If you have saved KPI layouts saved against this data, they will be listed for you. You can also see if you have shared this KPI and where you have shared it in the KPI Scope column. Click on the Load Layout link to generate the KPI data. The KPI data will be generated. It is worthy to note that you can export the KPI data to Excel and other formats if you wish. There are export controls at the top of the KPI data grid. There are many options available that will ensure you are exporting the data exactly how you want it exported. Simply click on the Save or Open buttons. This is an example of how the KPI data is exported to Microsoft Excel.